So, we're starting.
Is it possible for me to get like 3 minutes too?
Yes. Sure. I'll keep time.
Thank you. Everybody. So, for this 15-minute chunk, it is a piece that comes out of a workshop that Jess and I actually led in August and have retooled and are going to be leading it again in January, called Embodying Ease for Social Change Makers. And so this program is really for a diversity of change makers, be they activists or be they workers or leaders in nonprofits, maybe they're even teachers. They're folks who are really making some contribution to their community. And they might have a little bit of worry about burnout. And they might have a little bit of worry that they're working a little bit harder than they need to do to be. They might even notice some of that experience in their bodies, like tightness, stiffness. They might be really struggling in some way in how they move through the world as well. And so we're introducing this tool of ease. And I'm going to share with you, in the workshop it's 4 guidelines, but with 15 minutes, I'm just going to do the 3 of those 4 guidelines for this. Because the workshop chunk is really 25 to 30 minutes when we do all 4. So yeah, that's what's up. So far today, we've been talking about ease. And I know we just came back from a little bit of a break after we've talked about ease. So just to rehash a little bit where we've been so far. Ease is taking small, sweet steps towards what's meaningful to you with that sense of gentleness and that lightness that we've been talking about. We talked about that trouble at the border experience that we all go through, and we're up to something new or different or bringing some project into the world, right? And just checking back in with yourselves again for a moment, wouldn't it be great when you're up to some new project to experience even 15% more ease? Like, what would become possible for you if you had that much more energy to apply towards really doing that project well and with gentleness? Like, what could that do for your team, for your class, for your coworkers, right? To be really gentle in how you go about doing that project. Like, isn't it so sweet to be around other people who aren't all frantic and overwhelmed and tired and exhausted, but they're really just right there with you? It's like, I know for me, it makes my body kind of like open up a little bit. I feel like I can breathe a little bit more. So we're gonna look at, because you might be thinking, okay, ease, yeah, that sounds great, but like, small, sweet steps, good. How do I actually do small, sweet steps? So we're gonna make small, sweet steps a little easy for you. We're gonna break it down into 4 guidelines. So you can be very clear about what it looks like to be naming and taking and sustaining these small, sweet steps with that gentleness. It's almost like we're breaking the small, sweet steps down into some small, sweet steps. So, 4 guidelines. First one. Smaller is better. Smaller is better. Take a look at that for yourself. Smaller is better. It's a little bit antithetical to how we kind of think about moving through the world. Well, if small is good, then bigger is better, right? Smaller is better. I can think of a time in my own life when I was just saying yes to everything. Is it familiar to anybody? Just saying yes to this project and that project, and for me, saying yes to that campaign, and organizing an event on top of it out of some worry that, well, I have all the skills, nobody else is going to do it. I'm the person to be doing this work. And then all of a sudden, well, this project's due Tuesday, and I still haven't done it yet, or I haven't done the work that's necessary, so I'm going to have to skip dinner with my partner, and I'm going to have to stay up late and eat at my desk, and then I wake up the next morning just, so exhausted already because I couldn't sleep, thinking about all the things I have to do that I've said yes to, right? Let's take a look for yourself, in your own life, how that might show up. And where might smaller is better really make a difference for you? I'd love to hear from just one of you. Where might smaller is better really make a difference?
I remember when I did my first poetry slam, I wrote one line of the poem a day, and I actually got it done that way. Otherwise, I don't think I would have actually done it.
Yeah, you might not have actually even done it. And at this point, we would do a little bit more discussion, but just for the sake of it. What I want to really appreciate about, one thing you're saying here is like you might not have actually done it. The really powerful thing about smaller is better is it produces this sense of steadiness, right? By breaking it down into this first small little piece and say, well, I know I can do that little piece. And then you take the next step, and I know I can do that piece, and you stay kind of steady. Whereas if you might have overpromised, bitten off too much, right? Taken on too much, you might have taken that first step and been a little bit wobbly. And monkey mind, like we talked about earlier, just goes kind of haywire. And then you don't actually end up doing it. So you kind of get taken out of your game by that monkey mind. Whereas smaller is better, with those small steps, the steadiness kind of sends a message to monkey mind that all is well. We know you can do this one. We know you can do this one. We know you can do the next one. And those add up, right? You actually completed the poetry slam, it sounds like. You actually did it, right? Those small, sweet steps can build to some really incredible impact, but do it with some level of sustainability. And really, the most successful change makers are those that are sustainable, not the ones that are taking the biggest possible leap, but are able to actually maintain their work over time. And maintain that gentleness and presence and ease for their team consistently, even when things get really shaken up and tough. So smaller is better. And the second one builds on this, too. Promise the result, not the effort. Promise the result and not the effort. It's so important that when we're taking small steps, we be very clear about what each of those small steps is going to be. We be very clear what is actually the result that I want to produce with this particular step I'm about to take. Have it be very measurable even, so that you can know when you've completed it, and then say, all right, well, I've done that one. What is the next small, sweet step? Again, having that steadiness. But if we just promise the effort, like I know I'm kind of liable to sometimes say, oh, I'm going to spend 30 minutes on this project, and we'll see what we get done. And then 30 minutes goes by, and I'm like, I don't actually know what I got done. Like imagine, I'm in my nonprofit job, and it's really important for me to have a newsletter for my organization. And I was like, okay, I'm going to give myself some spaciousness to actually write this newsletter. So I have plenty of space and time. And I'm going to spend, 5-10 minutes a day for a couple of days to get this newsletter put together. And I might sit down for 5 or 10 minutes, promising the effort of that time, and stare at a blank page, not having written anything after those 10 minutes are passed. Maybe I get down a few words, right? Anybody ever have that familiar experience when you're up to a project and you're just like, what do I put here? I know for me when I'm writing, it's like, well, I don't actually know what to say. Other people have written things better. Maybe I'll just copy and paste from some other cool thing on the internet and not actually put down my own ideas, right? And then I just kind of freeze and don't write it. But if I were to be specific, what is it that I want to produce in this time that I have, by saying, all right, well, I have a couple days, so let's write a paragraph a day for the next few days. Just a paragraph. I know that I can write a paragraph. It doesn't have to be the whole thing, but I know I can concretely do that small step. So then when the worries come up that might have me freezing on a blank page, I can just lightly step over them and say, thank goodness for past Seth promising something that I know that I can do. I know I can sit down and do that. And you might actually have it written that paragraph in 2 minutes. And then you have a whole other rest of that 10 minutes that you initially promised yourself when you were promising the effort to either keep writing or do something else, right? Say, I did what I said I would do, and move on. So it's so important that we be clear about what it is that we want to produce. Taking a look for yourself, I mean, what difference might that make to more consistently be promising the result as you take small steps? Being very clear. I'd love to hear from one of you. Megan, you're smiling.
Oh, sure. So the question is, how would I be more clear with my small speed step?
What difference might it make for you?
The difference. So the example that comes to my mind when I look at it is I've been trying to like work out in the morning, but making it really like small, so like 5 minutes, so it's not like this big thing. And being clear in the 5 minutes and stopping at 5 minutes has been no way. That's what comes to my mind.
Hmm. And so you're promising that 5 minutes, right? And what difference might it make for you in terms of actually being really clear what you'd like to produce, have the result be at that 5 minutes?
Yeah, it just, the difference between being clear and not clear for me in that was like, I felt like it was more attainable and that it wasn't just this ambiguous, like, I'm gonna work out and do it for an amount of time. Like, it was a smaller thing that I feel like I've been able to do more diligently. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. Thank you. So promising the result and not the effort. The third one builds on this. This is my favorite because it's so sweet. Guideline 3, acknowledge even the smallest result, even the tiniest little ones. You know, it's so connected to the second one because A, it's important that we be clear about what it is that we're going to be producing in this time, but then we can know that we've done it and we can celebrate ourselves, we can acknowledge it. Right? If we just promise the effort, then we might not actually know what it is that we've completed and say, oh, I don't know if I did enough in that time. But if you were actually very clear, this is what it is that I'm willing to produce in this time, you can be on the other side, say, you know, I'm willing to write 1 paragraph. I can say, well, I know I've done 1 paragraph. Well done, Seth, for actually, you know, sitting down and completing that. And how often do you wait to acknowledge yourself? Because it wasn't good enough, or it wasn't big enough, or you actually haven't gotten to the goal yet, like this step really wasn't deserving of celebration. I'll celebrate when I get to the goal. What's that like to wait, sometimes until never?
Because then I'll move the goal to a new goal.
Yeah.
So I haven't achieved anything at all.
What else? What's that like to wait until never to celebrate yourself?
Yeah. Not very fun.
It's not very fun. It just like kind of turns into a
Grind.
grind. It turns into a grind. And it's like the enjoyment's just not present so much anymore. Right? And the neat thing about celebrating, acknowledging yourself for every, even the smallest tiny result, is we can really train our brains to actually acknowledge, see the value in even the smallest result. And when we do that, something interesting happens in our brains. We actually strengthen those synaptic pathways that were required to do that thing in the first place. So wouldn't it be neat to know, even by taking a tiny little second of saying, what am I grateful for about myself? What would I love to acknowledge myself for? You know, even taking that tiny little second actually sets you up for more success in the future. Because it says, oh, well, I knew I could take that step, so I know I can take the next one. I know I can take the next one. You look back, wow, look at how far I've been. And almost like the acknowledging yourself kind of adds some extra juice to the jet fuel. And I'll share a little story here about acknowledging. I recently did a bike trip from Washington, D.C. to Pittsburgh, and 333 miles over the span of 8 days. And the first day was amazing. And the second day was awful. My butt hurt, my legs hurt, I was tired, I didn't sleep very well, I was so cranky. And there were mile markers, literally, every mile there's a post. And I was counting down, okay, 30 miles till the end of the day, 28 miles to the end of the day, 20 miles to the end of the day, and then I'll be able to enjoy myself when I get to camp. Because I'm just so miserable, I'm just wallowing in it. And I realized at the end of the day, this is not how I want to do the next 6 days. This is just not very fun. This isn't enjoyable at all. And so what I started doing the next day, whenever I came across one of those mile markers, I said, thank you. Thank you, mile 98. Thank you, mile 99. Thank you, mile 100. And acknowledging and celebrating the lesson that I learned, even the hard things, even when I was climbing that hill and my legs felt like they were on fire. You know, by saying thank you even along that step, I said, oh yeah, okay, that's the fuel to get me a little bit further. And the result is I enjoyed myself. I was able, when I met people at camp, instead of complaining and kind of wallowing together in how rough it is to be on the trail, because you know, when you're doing something tough and you're doing it with people, it can be easy to just kind of complain about it. Instead, we were talking about all the things that we appreciated, and talking about the cool heron that we saw, and the wildlife, the turtles on the log, and you know, really enjoying ourselves. So it's so important to acknowledge yourself so you can enjoy this one precious life as you do the really important work that you're up to.